Good morning, everyone, and congratulations to Union Bank on their centenary anniversary. Looking forward to the next 100 years of greatness. Random fact, my mom and my dad met while both working at Union Bank in the early 70s. So I have Union Bank to thank for being here. So when I was asked to speak about the jobs of the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of imposter syndrome. Living and working in Lagos and having the opportunity to visit San Francisco, the home of Silicon Valley, once or twice a year, I tend to feel like I'm living in the past in Lagos and visiting the future in San Francisco. Casual conversations that people have about dining at fully automated restaurants where there are no people. Of course, the food is cooked at the back by people, but your servers, cashiers, all of that is digitally done. People have conversations about self-driving cars being a couple of years around the corner and are actually working on teams that are developing this. Or conversations about cryptocurrency being traded and rising in value, where I should have put my money. Conversations about smart homes and how people's personal assistants are actually artificial intelligence bots. So yes, I struggle to fathom what the jobs of the future in 5 years will be, or even the next 18 months. On my last trip, I had a conversation with a friend from business school, and she's a product manager and was in between jobs, so she's currently job searching. And I was struck by the variety of industries that she is thinking about. Everything from housing marketplace companies to ride-sharing companies to credit card processing companies, hardware, software, nowhere. She has options. Why? She explained to me that a product manager is the CEO of a product. They're the ones who decide what features the product should have, who the suppliers should be, how much it will cost, what's the strategy for getting it to market. And as she says, every company will always have products or services, and therefore, product managers will always be in demand. Even back here, I got, when I was talking to a friend this weekend who's head of marketing at an FMCG company, and we were talking about artificial intelligence and how it's going to change digital marketing. Isn't he worried about the future of his job? And he said, no. As long as there are companies with products and services, you will always need creatives to think about campaigns to inspire people to want your brand and to be associated with it. And yes, artificial intelligence is going to help enhance his work, but not that he's going to be out of work. And so it got me thinking about a Jeff Bezos quote that I like. And Jeff Bezos says, if you're trying to build a successful and sustainable business, not this quote, yeah. If you're trying to build a successful and sustainable business, don't ask yourself what's going to be changing in the next 10 years that could affect your company. Instead, ask yourself what won't change and put all your energy and effort into that. I can't imagine a future where consumers will want higher prices and less value for their money. I can't imagine a future where somebody would prefer a more inconvenient product to a more convenient product. And so applying that same frame to the jobs of the future, I think it's worth asking, besides what's going to change in the future, where I think we spend a lot of our energy and effort thinking about as young people, what isn't going to change in the next 10 years? Whether we become 410 million by 2050 or not, the hundreds of millions of people in this country will continue to require 1 to 3 meals a day, which continues to signify the huge potential of the agriculture sector. And so how do we put all our energy and effort behind that sector? How do we become the next Netherlands where they're innovating in precision farming, which I just found out what that was. It's how do you apply IT to figure out when the soil and the crop needs the things that they need to maximize the productivity. They have fully automated tractors They have drones that are figuring out, okay, when is the right time for the pesticides to be sprayed, for the fertilizers, and are actually doing some of the harvesting. How do we invest in our talent? You have companies like Farm Crowdy that Ndidi mentioned earlier, that's financing people who want to be in agriculture, young people who want to get into the agricultural space. How do we find those sorts of innovative systems and start to invest in our talent to go into this industry that's not going anywhere in the next 10, 20 years and beyond? What's definitely not going to change is that the 200 million or 500 million people are going to need housing. And so how do we start to invest in this sector and build the skills of the artisans that need to get us there? And whether we end up leapfrogging, I mean, right now there are 3D printed houses. You can 3D print a house in 24 hours. That house will still need electricians and wiring, etc. And so where we decide to invest our energy and our effort to create more potential for these sectors that aren't going anywhere will determine the future that we create. Right now, there are people making clothing material from living organisms, from bacteria. Biocouture, it's called, to help us be more sustainable as we meet the clothing demands, which aren't going anywhere in the next 20 years. And the list goes on, from entertainment to leisure, to home care, to elderly care, to child care. Certain things are not going to change in the next 10 years. And so it forces us to think about how we create the future that we want. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So what does that mean practically? It means that for business leaders, if you think your business is going to be around in the next 20 years, investing in secondary education is not an option. It's a survival mechanism. And I don't mean the false dichotomy that we've created between secondary on one side and vocational on the other side. The job of every educator is to teach people not only how to learn to know things from textbooks and lectures, but to teach people to learn how to be, to discover who they are, what they're good at, what they're interested in and passionate about. And also as important is to teach people to learn how to do things. From the practical skills, learning how to build and fix and create things, to the more abstract skills, learning how to analyze information, gather evidence, negotiate, communicate, solve problems, work collaboratively. That is the kind of education that we need to be investing in as businesses. We have a 100-year gap between our education levels that our young people are getting today and what they are getting in the developed world. And so adopting a school in the traditional CSR format is not going to close that gap. We're talking about investing in hard skills, investing in soft skills. Let me go back. Don't worry, I know it off by heart. I just made the slides for you guys. So you don't have to look at my face the entire time. And so investing in skills training. How do we invest in our vocational skills training? I mean, the beauty of investing in skills training, I found it's hard work, what we do, but it's different it's less hard, as far as I'm concerned, than primary, basic, and secondary education. You see, the user in basic and secondary education is not the payer. You have to convince someone's parents to invest in their education. With vocational skills, the adult who you're training is going to invest in that because they're going to get a job and they're going to have income and be able to pay you back. And so that's why it's a different sort of challenge. And so how do we find models that are already doing that right now as we speak? You've heard of Andela, that's just raised, closed their 40 million Series C fund round, where they're creating the next generation of software developers. I don't know how many of you have heard of an organization called MITI-MEF that is training local artisans to use water hyacinth, which are fairly dangerous for the sustainable environment, to use water hyacinth to train, to create beautifully made handicrafts, furniture, accessories. There's a Street Project Foundation, little known foundation that is training unemployed young people in creative youth boot camps and putting them into the creative and performing arts industries. There's WAVE, where we find unemployed young people 18 to 35, regardless of whether they have a degree or not, and we teach them life skills and work skills that are going to be applicable across any industry and help them find entry-level work primarily in the services sector, where we find that you develop the skills that are going to help you be competitive in whatever industry because you're learning to manage yourself and manage others. And so how do we find these models that are working and are creating alternative pathways to careers for young people in these sectors that aren't going anywhere anytime soon? And how do we invest in them to scale them up? Every company, whether you admit it or not, you are a school. As Modupe said, who are our teachers? Our entrepreneurs are our teachers. 90% of the jobs in this country are created by SMEs. And so us SMEs are carrying the weight of the education system on our back. We are taking the young people and we're training them in our apprenticeship systems, whether we acknowledge them as apprenticeship systems or not. And so how do we formalize that investment? Every bank has its own academy, and they're all unique and teach you very unique things. But at the end of the day, they're a very common set of skills that all of them need to know. And so how do we pool our resources together and become prosumers of skills, producers and consumers, working with the education system to teach the common skills that are going to be required to get us the productive talent that we need? And it's not CSR, it's things that are actually going to have a return on investment for us. Because remember, talent is the only thing that gets harder as a business grows. It's easier to raise funding as you grow. Talent does not get easier. And so those are very practical things for the business people to invest in. And then for the educators, we've talked about this. Let's refocus what education should be about. It should be about developing competencies and not about credentials. It should be about developing skills and not just additional years of schooling. And so we have to change the game there. And for us young people, what do we need to do? We need to also change the game, because the illiterates of the 21st century is not going to be the person who can't read and write, as Alvin Tofer, the writer, says. It's going to be those who do not know how to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so for us young people, we have to change the focus to be about lifelong learning and life-wide learning, not just in the classroom. In every element of life, we're learning the skills that are going to be required for the workplace. And so I think about a young man called Paul Anigoro, who came to our program 4 years ago. He was part of our first cohort. He'd been through secondary school, had been through IT training, and was still struggling to make ends meet, to find steady and stable work. And so he came through our program, and we screened him in simply because of his willingness to learn, that important ability to learn and unlearn and relearn. And he learned these skills: how to communicate, how to solve problems, how to manage his time, how to work with others, digital literacy, how to negotiate. And then he realized the passion that he had for art and design, and saw that the food industry could be an interesting place to apply his skills. So he gave it a shot. He actually got a job at a hotel in Ikoyi. Started off as a kitchen steward, washing plates, dishes, just to make enough money to go to school. 4 years later, Paul is about to graduate from Yaba Tech with a degree in arts and design. And he's found that in the food industry, he's learned about food presentation and how you apply art and design to food. And so he's on his way to becoming a chef. And so in the next 3-4 years, I may run into Paul, and he may have developed a new vocational interest based on the new set of jobs and opportunities in the future. But what's going to keep him competitive throughout life is that ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that is what we need to be investing in as companies. So I think I've been able to admit that I don't quite know what the jobs of the future might be. But what I do know is that the jobs of the future will be created by how we invest in today's assets, the young people of today. How we invest in their ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn.